Thank you, Joe, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, my name is Rich Siegel. I have been running a Mac-only developer business for longer than some of you damn kids have been alive. And that's where the old guy stuff is going to end. I do have a quick program note. There's not going to be any pyrotechnics. But those of you in the front better get ready. So, and Joe mentioned that I had spoken at Singleton, and that was when we met. And that's actually the last time I've been up in front of a room this size. And on that day, we announced that we were leaving the Mac App Store. Today, I'm not going to announce that we're getting back into it, but the subject will come up because it's relevant to this. And in the meantime, yes, I'm going to talk about marketing and cupcakes. So BBEdit has been a popular and widely recognized product since we first commercially released it in 1993. And I'll be the first to say it's a great product, but it's not well known and popular and successful just because it's great, because we market it. One of the ways in which we market is through customer service, and we are widely known for our fast and thorough customer service. And Sarah, I apologize in advance because I'm probably going to say a couple of things that are going to make you cringe. And also, part of that service is the technical service that we provide in the process of writing and releasing the extensive change notes that go along with each version release and each maintenance update. So for us, marketing isn't just about acquiring new customers, it's about keeping the ones we have, and I won't say exploiting them because that's not fair, it's not true, but building long-term relationships that really benefit us both. We can sell them upgrades, we can sell them new licenses, and they keep helping us make our products better. That's the back and forth relationship that we have. So today, I'm going to talk about the importance of marketing through customer interaction as one aspect of the larger strategy of, how do you make a living in today's business climate, because it's really challenging. So first, a story. A customer tweeted about his having been in business for 20 years and having used BBEdit all that time. He said they should send me a cake. Hey, if it involves cake, we're in. I personally love cake. Everybody I know loves cake. Cake is good. Before we get into the cake, let's go back in time a little bit to the mid-1980s, back when the Mac industry was just getting started. I hadn't started my company yet, but I was working for a Mac developer. I was working with Macs. I was programming them, and things were really uphill both ways. The independent Mac developer ecosystem didn't exist until the mid-1980s, a couple of years after the Mac first came out. From then, from the mid-80s to the mid-90s or late 90s, shipping a software product was really something that you could only do if you had a lot of money. You had to pull together the resources to buy workstations for every developer, and Macs were not cheap back then. And you needed more horsepower per developer than you did today. So you had to be able to invest in those capital costs for each developer. You had to invest in the production of packaging, finished goods, pretty boxes and manuals and shrink wrap and floppy disks and labels and CD-ROMs and artwork, and oh my goodness. That stuff was expensive. And then you had to get into a distribution channel. You had to have a product that was interesting with enough revenue potential that a distributor would be interested in selling it retail, in buying it wholesale and selling it retail. So to recap briefly, yes, you had to design a box for the product, and the box had to have shelf appeal so that when the customer, the end user, walked into the retail outlet, they would see your product on the shelf. It would catch their attention. So screenshots, detailed informational copy, things for them to read, and that all went back to print design. You had to anticipate how many customers you thought were going to buy your product so that you could anticipate, scale your production runs so that you had enough product to satisfy demand, but also the more you had made, the less it cost you per product. The longer you're willing to wait for delivery, the less you could pay. The quicker you needed it, the more it would cost you. And again, you just sort of want to tear your hair out because all of these factors have to be balanced, and at some point it actually becomes a gamble. And finally, you had to have a place to put all this stuff that you just made. The thousands of printed manuals, the tens of thousands of floppy disks, boxes, labels, and so you needed warehousing, shipping, and inventory control to get it all out the door. And if you wanted to be on the shelf in a retailer, at the time it was Egghead Software, CompUSA, Computer City. Raise your hands if you remember any of those. Oh, far too many hands. All of those retail outlets were fed by distributors, Ingram Micro, SoftBank, and so forth. And if you didn't have a relationship with a distributor, you were nowhere. It was all very intermediated. This intermediation didn't come along until the internet. And the distributors took a pretty big cut. The amount of money, the amount of discount that you had to give up to a distributor would typically not be less than 30%. Sound familiar? But some of them would take up to 50% off depending on the services that you wanted or the services that they provided or really just how much they wanted relative to what they thought they could offer. But all of this hassle, all of this effort went into marketing. It was a way of marketing your product. You put this effort into the visual design of the shelf package, and that turned into visibility. So every time a customer looked at your product, every time they laid eyes on the product on the shelf, that was a win. That was a marketing win. And so all the work that we did there made it possible for us to enter the consciousness of the audience, not in some transcendental way, but literally the audience became aware of us because of our marketing. So that was the mid-'80s and really into the 90s. But in the late 90s, as the internet took off, as storage became cheaper, bandwidth became cheaper, more plentiful, and there was this great democratization in the production of Mac software in particular. Again, that's the lens through which I'm looking at this. So you could now, you'd fire up CodeWarrior if that's what you were using then. It was only $500 for the development tools, only $500. Anybody with $500 in a Mac could set up shop and start producing a product, and then set up a website and start selling it. And that was it for physical goods. Boxes became unnecessary. Printed manuals went to PDFs. We ended up not having, by the end of the 90s, we weren't spending anything on packaging production. And along with that, we didn't have to spend anything on packaging design. I think there are implications for designers at that point, but I was not too aware of that at the time, not so much as I am now anyway. I think a lot of packaging designers have ended up designing apps. So, of course, this was true for everyone else too. And as a result of this, there has been this explosion of indie developers ever since that time. Amazing products have shipped that would never have seen the light of day if today you had to go through everything that we had to go through back in the 90s. On the other hand, as it has gotten that much easier to ship and sell, it has also gotten that much harder to make a living at it. Certain markets become crowded. The consumer sees a cornucopia, the producer sees a glut. And this, in some instances, developers have chosen to compete on price. Somebody will enter the market with a product that looks a lot like something that's already there, but they'll say, okay, well, we can produce this cheaper, so let's sell it cheaper, or let's give it away so that we can undercut everyone else. Others have chosen to introduce at a lower price to build awareness. And for some people this works, but the problem is that both of these behaviors have this long-term effect of lowering everyone's selling prices. And frequently the selling prices go to below the levels that are sustainable for any business. I'll come briefly back to that. The other thing that we've seen, and this goes back more to the App Store, more recently to the App Store, is because the App Store doesn't support an upgrade model, there's been a lot of disruption of upgrade-based revenue models. So historically, the way Mac software works and the way we still do it outside of the App Store is you introduce a product, the customer pays once to buy it, and then begins a cycle where we release upgrade versions and we make the upgrade versions interesting for the customer to buy. And the customer gives us something less than the full purchase price at they get a discount for their loyalty. And that's all gone with the App Store. You really can't do that. So the customer expectation has gone to either buy once and use forever, or it should be free. What are we supposed to do? Well, we find that in this environment, you have to change, you have to rethink the way you market, you have to go away from the sort of let's catch their attention with a box model to word of mouth marketing. And one other catch that is a part of this picture is the cost of producing and maintaining each individual product in a lineup. And I'll promise I'll pull all this together for you soon. So every product you ship costs you money to release. And this is the case even if the products share a lot of common code. BBEdit and Mailsmith, which was our old email client, shared a great deal of core code. Today, BBEdit and TextWrangler almost completely overlap, but each product costs us money to develop and ship. Each product has a separate identity, so each one has its own branding and related artwork and user interface design. There have to be distinct marketing efforts. There has to be distinct documentation, which we still produce. And the engineering processes are frequently disjoint as well. And then carrying on, each one needs its own QA track and its own tech support resources and its own release schedule. So maintaining these multiple products really does add a lot of overhead to our processes because it's, each cost is multiplied by the number of products that you sell. So all that being said, there's one more piece in this puzzle which I think has become pretty important. And that is that Apple is no longer a neutral business force in the developer ecosystem. What do I mean by this? Well, it has always been in Apple's interest to have a developer community that produces unique and innovative products to bring users to the platform. Because the customer will buy a Mac to run a particular piece of software, or they'll buy an iPhone to run something that's only available on iOS. So in the 80s and 90s, Apple, in the words of Guy Kawasaki, would plant 1,000 flowers. They would encourage development. They would encourage adoption. And if you were working on something relevant to Apple's strategic interests, even if you didn't necessarily know what those interests were, you might get favored nation status. Apple would feature a screenshot or an icon at WWDC, or you'd get inside track technical assistance. And there's lots of sort of non-material support that you could get if Apple knew that you were working on something. In the mid-90s, and I won't give away too much, but in the early to mid-90s, when the web was on the way up, Apple had something called the Internet Server Solution. Manton, where are you? There you are. You remember it? And And we worked with them. We did a bundle deal with them, and it's pretty good. But what Apple didn't do was they didn't take a direct financial interest in the actual buying and selling of Mac software, or today iOS software. They didn't try to establish pricing standards. They didn't tell us where to set our pricing. And they didn't try to influence the business models or business operations of any of the developer community generally. And furthermore, and perhaps most important in context, they didn't try to affect how we could get in touch with our customers. With the advent of the App Store, Apple has assumed an active role in how every product in the store is marketed. This begins with pricing. I agree with the notion, although I didn't invent it, but I agree with the notion that app pricing has its roots in the 99-cent iTunes song model. They established a price point pretty early on. And this also affects discovery of products. And so in a very real sense, today Apple has assumed a similar role to what CompUSA did and other shelf providers did back in the day. They decide whether products appear on the shelves at all, and they decide whether any given product is to get featured placement. And so, unlike shelf retail, there is nothing you can do in packaging or documentation to get yourself featured on the App Store. It's really entirely up to Apple. That's a pretty scary place to be if you're trying to run a stable, sustainable business. So how do you do it? How can you sustain a business as a developer in this ecosystem? Well, we know Apple's always been doomed, right? Apple's been doomed since 1985, right? But the Apple ecosystem is a bigger issue. This isn't just about the Mac anymore. Well, let's start by charging a fair price for our products. The pricing that we pick has to reflect its value to the customer. I had a great conversation with David Sparks the other day, and the F word came up again. There's fair pricing, and the question becomes, okay, if you're complaining about a $50 price point, how does this improve your business? How much is an hour of your billable time worth? And suddenly it doesn't look like so much. So put your product price where you believe it reflects the value that you bring to the customer, and which allows you to make a living because you have your own costs. Then market the product according to that value, even if that doesn't necessarily exactly reflect its price. So if you're putting your product price up above where the market might think it should be, free 1 star, then you'll have to put that same kind of effort into marketing your value proposition. And finally, don't rely on luck. This means that you will have to invest a level of effort here. Don't rely on accidental App Store placement. Don't rely on accidental discovery. As Christina said, it is kind of a shit show. So what we do is we add value to our products through the way we interact with customers. Every time the customer gets in touch with us, and it doesn't matter why they do it. It doesn't matter if they think they've found a bug. It doesn't matter if they want to complain about pricing. It doesn't mean if they're just writing in to tell us how much they love us, because that happens. Crazy. Every time a customer writes in, it is a marketing opportunity. I cannot come down hard enough on that. If the interaction has a successful outcome, means you answered their question, you provided a bug fix, you addressed their complaint, the customer will be that much more likely to recommend your product or service, or service if you have a front end and a back end. Email is how we do most of our customer interaction, most of our direct one-on-one customer interaction. And here, it is crucial to not sound like a bot. You are a human, you have to sound like one. So I'm going to get a little nuts and bolts here for a couple of minutes and talk about how we do it And this isn't intended to be prescriptive. What I'm doing is I'm describing what we've done, which has worked for us for a long time. I'm not saying you have to do it the way we do it. Recommend it, though. As I said first, be human, sound like a human. That means you need to be friendly and open and professional. You address the customer by name if they use their name, but don't like pull their initials and say, "Dear FJ, thank you for writing in," if you don't know their name. But, "Dear Alice, thanks for writing in. Nice to hear from you again." And make every effort to convey, get through to the customer that you're on their side, you're here to help, because you are. And at the same time, we have some common sense practices for professionalism, because the customer has to have confidence that they're dealing with somebody who can help them. Obvious things, correct spelling and grammar, no-brainer, right? But it's easy to forget. Take the time, proofread. Once in a while, customers will write in and ask for something that we're just not in a position to give them. And maybe that's because it's not feasible. Maybe that's because it doesn't fit in with where we think the product should go, because we're kind of forceful about that when it comes right down to it. We have ideas, and we'll adjust to customer needs, but we still have a core vision to stick to. Sometimes the customer just asks for something that isn't reasonable. That happens too. When that happens, we serve up, when we have to say no to a customer, we serve up what's called the yes sandwich. Kind of what it sounds like. It's 2 slices of yes with a no in the middle, right? Literally. But in the overall sense, it's how we keep the experience positive for the customer, while at the same time telling them that we can't give them what they're asking for. Bless you. So the first yes is usually some form of thank you. Thanks for writing in. Nice to hear from you. Whatever the notion here is the important thing, not the exact words. But we appreciate it when customers write into us, so we make sure that we get that across to them. The second is where the regret comes in. We regret, and again, not literally those words, because we regret the inconvenience. Nope. No, but we do regret the inconvenience. It's just that using those exact words is kind of cringeworthy. But we'll explain, it's not feasible, it doesn't fit in with what we think the product should be doing generally. Whatever the appropriate framing is, let them down as gently as we can. And finally, again, another yes. We'll certainly consider this. We'll keep it in mind. We appreciate you having taken this time to share your thoughts. Again, the concept, the wording, less important. The wording is important, but the concept is more important. So back from the yes sandwich, just a couple of final points about email. Reading comprehension is really important. It's important to understand the customer's needs before giving them an answer. And if that means you have to ask them several questions back and forth before you can tell them the answer, do it. Because it's better to understand them and for them to feel understood than for you to send them away with a wrong answer that results in a bad experience. Because what will happen is later on, all they'll remember is they steered me wrong. You want to be steering them right. Be responsive in terms of turnaround time. We always try to respond to incoming mail within a single business day. If we can't, we write back and we say, "I'm sorry it took so long to get back to you. I got run over by a bus." Or, again, make sure that they recognize how important it was to you to get back to them as soon as you could, even if it wasn't immediate. Going a little deeper, there are 2 specific things that we handle in specific ways, and those are feature requests and bug reports. When a customer writes in with a feature request, there are really 3 ways to deal with that. Either it's already present, it's something we're going to do, or it's not going to happen. If it's already present, let the customer know where to find it. And you want to be gentle here. You might have thought it was obvious, but if the customer thought it was obvious, they wouldn't have written in. So making the customer feel dumb about not having found something that you think is obvious is not good customer service. So in situations like that, part of your response should be, hey, I'll take a look and see if I can figure out a way to make that more visible. Because they didn't find it, maybe somebody else didn't find it either. Sorry about that. If it's a planned feature, you can say, we're going to provide this in a future version. How about a beta when it's ready? If you have it ready, send them a beta. Don't wait for them to ask. Just say, hey, here's a beta. Here's what we're currently seeding to our QA process. Give it a try and tell us how it works for you. Because if you do that, it elevates your support experience above and beyond the standard of service that most customers are used to seeing. We get a lot of customers who write in hostile out of the gate because they don't think anybody's paying attention, because historically nobody has paid attention. So if we take that dial and turn it up from 1 to 9 on their expectation scale, we can say, okay, here's a build which implements this thing. Here's a build which implements this, which fixes this bug that you just found. And they'll be like, oh my God, this has never happened before. I hear trumpets. Sometimes you, as I said, you have to say no, and that's where the yes sandwich comes back into play. Bug reports, the other one. You hopefully have a high level of confidence in your product's reliability, or else you wouldn't have shipped it, right? But even with that, the customer's contacting you because they've run into something or they think they've run into a problem. So be humble. Say to them, thanks for bringing this to our attention. Not in those words. We're sorry to hear you ran into this. That sentiment has to come before, we've never seen that before, or that works fine on my machine. It does work fine on my machine. Sorry, it doesn't work fine on theirs. Then there are specific framings. Again, bugs that you've already found and fixed, here's a beta. Things that are new, you reproduce it, you offer a beta if you have a fix. If you can't reproduce it, another yes sandwich. You say, I can't make this happen right now, but I'll keep digging into it. Thanks for the report. We'll get back to you if we have a fix or if we need more information. Time for another quick digression. There is an inconvenient truth about bug reports, and that is that most of them are useless on initial contact. The customer, it's like being a vet. Any of you are vets or no vets, veterinarians? Your patient can't talk to you. Your patient cannot describe what the problem is. So you have to ask for information. You have to gather as much information. And you can't even observe directly. So again, go back and forth with the customer until you have what you need to help them. So that's it for email. Let's talk a little bit about Twitter. Because that's our primary social media contact with customers. We don't use Facebook for customer service. That's not our audience. It might be yours though, so I think this will apply for you. A lot of our audience uses Twitter. So it's a really good way for us to connect one-on-one with individual people in the audience. We also use it as a news feed. So when we have a new beta or a new release or other news, we'll put it out on Twitter. But our primary use of Twitter is not as a news feed. We see companies, we see brands using Twitter as strictly a fire hose, and we don't think that's a good use of the medium. But by engaging with the customer, we build awareness in two directions. First is, by being on Twitter and keeping an ear to the ground, we can see what people are saying to us, we can see what people are saying about us in the audience, And when we connect with an individual in the audience, everyone else in the audience can see that happening. Because it's so easy to tweet, customers will frequently use Twitter to just vent about something that they ran into. That goes back to small claims court, right? It's so easy to just zip something out. Again, because you don't think anybody's listening. If you can address the customer's concern in the space of a single tweet, do it. Quick, done. You've just connected with them. They suddenly feel better about what they did and better about their experience than if they just shouted into a vacuum. Sometimes you can't do that and you need more information. Hey, I'm sorry, drop us a line at support and we'll pick it up there and help you out. And then on the support side of things, let your support department know what's going on. Here's a tweet, watch for incoming email. And then get on top of it and get it done. When you do this, you'll end up with fans. You'll end up with fans who will unconditionally praise you to the skies and in public, which is far better marketing than you could hope to buy for any amount of money. And these are just a few examples. Those are readable or not. There are people saying nice things about us on Twitter. So, back to those cupcakes, because it's time for cupcakes. How did we capitalize on this marketing opportunity? Well, the customer bought our product directly from us. So we had their address. If they had bought through the App Store, we wouldn't know how to get hold of them. So we wouldn't have been able to provide the level of personal attention that we were about to do, but we did it. We sent them cupcakes. I don't know if the note's readable. It says, thank you for being our customer for 20 years. Best wishes from at BBEdit and your friends at Barebones Software. Those cupcakes, as shown, the dozen delivered in the UK for $16. And they're good. We were paying attention. We were listening to what the audience was saying. We had our ear to the ground. We had the means and the motivation to do the legwork. So we did. We tracked the customer down. It turns out our records were a little out of date, which is a good thing we checked because they'd moved right around the corner. That would have been awkward. Then we found a supplier, somebody who made cupcakes and who could deliver them to where the customer was. This was, if anybody is in the UK, this was cupcake time there in Sheffield. Go buy a dozen cupcakes from them because they deserve your business. And it was a great chance to work with and support another small business. So this one, the customer, his Twitter followers, and our collective audience got this message that we are paying attention, not in a creepy, we're looking at you through binoculars kind of way, but in this positive, we're looking out for you way. We care. The whole exchange was, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, on brand for us. Because that's part of who we are. We always try to build loyalty with our customers and make this long-term commitment. And it was fun. We like having fun. We try to have fun when we can, because what's this all about if you can't have a little fun with it? And there was cake. So, 2 key points here I want to leave you with. The first is we are living and working and operating in a very challenging business environment on the Apple ecosystem. The challenges that we have to deal with are different today than they were 30 years ago, but it's still a very challenging environment. And the other thing is we can successfully market our products using these strong relationships that we make the effort to build on the basis of these positive interactions and positive word of mouth. There's one more thing, and this wouldn't be a presentation to an audience of Apple developers if there weren't one more thing, right? So as I mentioned early on, each product in the line is a separate brand and has a separate following. So when we look at BBEdit and TextWrangler together, we see two products, one of which is functionally a strict subset of the other. And yet, because of these intrinsic costs of shipping a product, we've got twice the QA and release cost, twice the marketing cost, even though there's near total code overlap. So we've decided to make some changes. As you probably know, BBEdit has always had a full-featured free demo, 30-day evaluation period. That's another one of our very effective marketing strategies. Beginning with the release of BBEdit 11.6 back in July, we changed the pricing structure so that after the 30-day evaluation period, instead of ceasing to be usable, the product is now free to use. During the evaluation period, all of its features, all of the things you would want to pay for are available. At any time after the evaluation period, you can buy a license code and keep using the advanced features. If you choose not to buy a license code, you can still keep using BBEdit, no charge. You still have a base feature set. It's actually a little bit more functional than TextWrangler as a couple of additional features. As I said, that's all shipping now. So what about TextWrangler? Our goal has always been to get every TextWrangler to use BBEdit. That's the ideal. Since TextWrangler is a strict subset of BBEdit, and BBEdit is free after the evaluation period, and it has more features, we believe it's time to start actively encouraging TextWrangler customers to switch. They'll end up with the same basic capabilities, plus some nice additional features, plus a more frequent update cycle. And this is going to happen over the next few months. So over the next few months, we'll be implementing a strategy which essentially rebrands TextWrangler as BBEdit, and that includes all of those additional features. And if you have a large installation, we have some customers who will need a little bit more time, we'll keep the terminal TextWrangler version available so that they can rebuild their installations as a tech support item. So that way, anyone who needs to keep using TextWrangler for some reason, they'll be able to do so, but we're going to stop putting development resources into it. And we're going to direct all of the incoming interest toward BBEdit. So now what about the Mac App Store? Well, since 2014, when we announced that we were taking BBEdit out of the Mac App Store, there have been a lot of changes in the store. Unfortunately, some of the pain points that motivated our decision to leave the store are still issues. But we've watched these changes to the store. The subscription stuff is very interesting to us. And if we feel like we can make it work, we will put some future version of BBEdit back into the Mac App Store. And for that, we will use an evaluation model similar to what we're just now shipping. For now, we'll keep the final version of TextWrangler in the store so that we have a presence there. And that's it.